the Now That We're a Family podcast.
So today we're going to talk about what we would tell our younger selves.
Ooh.
And as per usual, I have the three things that, sorry, I'm moving around the mics with my foot.
Is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, man.
Sorry. I have no clue what three things Elisha would tell his younger self. And he has no clue what I would tell my younger self. We usually don't talk over our points before we get on here. So I'm just as excited as you guys are to figure out what he would say.
Yeah, I don't know if this is like an insight into where I'm at spiritually right now, but not many of the things I would tell my younger self are very spiritual sounding.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe that's really revealing as to where I'm at right now in my life. I don't. Maybe it's not.
Well,
I don't want to
mean,
think.
you don't have to
wanna,
put that on yourself.
Sure.
Because some things are practical. We have to live. I mean.
Yeah, I think
not that's-
spiritual things. When I look in retrospect, you can always pull the whole like, oh, the Lord uses like He works all things together for the good of those that love Him, and like who are called according to His purpose. And I don't necessarily like overthinking or overanalyzing my past like spiritual shortcomings or lack of spiritual maturity, because I just see God's sovereign hand in all of it.
Okay, Elisha,
Well,
you're taking some of my points, so
man.
you don't know what mine are, so I feel like you can't like diss certain points or say like...
I wasn't dissing them. I was just saying it's not something that I feel compelled to do today.
Okay.
In today's episode.
Well...
Should you just want to start so
I
that
think
I
you're
don't
just
take any more?
supposed to say what you are compelled to do, and then I'll say what I'm compelled to do.
Yeah, I guess that was like a disclaimer for you and for, I guess, our listeners regarding, like, I do think that spiritual things are of the utmost importance. You know, they're of eternal significance. So they're like the most important things ever. But for whatever reason, the points I thought of today for what to tell my younger self don't seem very spiritual.
Well, maybe partially that's like because you don't have so many regrets in that area. Like maybe you felt like prepared spiritually.
Yeah, well, and I think a large part of that, I do agree. I don't have a ton of regrets, and I don't mean that from a self-righteous or pretentious standpoint. I really say it from a place of gratitude when I look at my parents and my upbringing and how they really were proactive in nurturing me and bringing me up in the nurture and admonition of God's word, and how my parents were so intentional about putting me around spiritual mentors. And so, I mean, hopefully it goes without saying that I'm very aware of my shortcomings and my moral failures and my lack of spiritual discernment at a young age, and looking at where I'm at now and being well aware of the fact that I better continue to grow in that area. I hope I continue to grow spiritually. But I don't have a ton of regrets in the categories that I would put like spiritual, because I do think that my parents were very shepherding in a healthy way.
So real quick before we dive in, it was funny because I was telling Leon just a few minutes ago, we put him to bed and he came out to go to the bathroom and he's like, "Where are you going?" Because I was putting on my makeup. And I said, "Oh, we're just going out to record a podcast and then we're going to go to bed." And he goes, "Oh, okay, that's a good idea." Just thought it was kind of funny.
Nice.
I'll tell you that. So anyways, so you wanted to go first? You want me to go first? I feel like these mics are really giving us like, you look like you have like a crook in your neck.
Oh,
I'm like,
no.
kind of like.
Okay, I'll try to look a little bit more relaxed. Why don't you start?
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. So my number one stress growing up, and so surrounded marriage, I think, to be honest. And I think what I would tell my younger self is the right man won't get away. So like, don't stress about it. I think I had the stress since I was like 16. I don't know. For a really long time, I just thought, oh my goodness, like I need to do things right, or my dad needs to let me talk to this guy, or I need to be able to date, or this other girl's gonna cut in, or stuff. Like I was just stressed about relationships. And I think just looking back, especially when I look at God's sovereignty and yours in my relationship, Elisha, because ultimately, wow.
Was
that a firework?
That was a firework, yeah.
That was so loud. I think ultimately, like when I look back at years in my relationship, you were probably 80% of that stress because I had the, fattest crush on you and kept having to go to plan Bs basically my whole single life.
What do you mean kept having to go to plan Bs? How many times were you going
Because
to
you
plan
kept
Bs?
you
Wow.
kept not showing interest in me. So it was like, okay, well, I'm not going to sit up on Jack's. And I think I would have just had a lot more faith looking back now at our relationship.
Yeah.
And how we did so many things wrong. And it was so kind of miraculous how we ended up being married. It was like the Lord had you for me and me for you. And I truly believed that, I do believe we can make decisions that are, that aren't aligned with God's will and what his best is for our life. But I feel like if I just continued seeking God, continued living my life, loving my life, and, looking good around you when possible, then it would have all worked out.
Yeah, it is pretty bizarre to think about how much anxiety and stress in my life was so surrounded. It was all surrounding like who you were potentially going to marry or finding your spouse, finding that one that God had for you. And I think that's a common theme for like young single, especially
totally.
Young single Christian people that have a high a high value on marriage, and they have a high value on keeping sex for marriage and things like that. It's a big deal when you're young and single, finding that person. And again, I think many of my regrets or things I would tell myself when I look in retrospect, they're regarding having stress and anxiety over different things that the Lord was clearly going to work out in his timing. And it's so easy to say that now, but that was what I would lose sleep over, or it's what I would spend hours in the day stressing about. Were usually things regarding my future spouse, or how I was preparing or not preparing for my future spouse, or how I was going to be able to win you over. And I think of that first year, the first time we dated, that year, it was a tumultuous year for both of us on an emotional level.
Oh yeah.
And it didn't end well. That first go around of trying to date was so painstakingly like awkward and challenging, and trying to sort through kind of that courtship / dating, mostly courtship, friendship, intentional friendship, or whatever we were supposed to call it. And then looking back at it now, it's so easy to laugh at and to be like, what a funny thing, what a kind of a fun part of our history. But in the midst of that, there was a lot of stress and anxiety.
Yeah, there was. And yeah, I had a lot of stress just in general. I mean, relationship stress was one of the big reasons my hair fell out when I was 19. And that caused a lot of stress in my life, going to doctors and all that. And I just think I could have avoided all of that if I just really trusted the Lord. And I do think, like, I'm not against single girls or single guys, like, going out there and making stuff happen. Like, I
Relationally?
yeah, like, I don't think you need to just, like, sit in your room and, like, wait for the Lord to drop a husband on your head. That's not what I wish. I just wish there wasn't anxiety or stress surrounding that. And I just truly could have been like, okay, well, like, I gave it my best shot, and the Lord's gonna decide if this guy is right for me or not. And I think I'm so grateful, I guess, that all the times I wanted something to work out too and got my heart broken, not all the times, a couple times, it did not work out. Does that make sense?
I don't think so. No.
Like when another guy, it didn't work out with another guy, I'm so grateful because the Lord had you for me.
Right. And you were doing everything in your power to have it work out.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, oh my word, like, there's so much stress going into that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, you could probably point to like any of my, I guess, like the things I would tell my younger self or any of my regrets. And so like 90% of them would be around like relational drama of the opposite sex, and trying to find your spouse.
Okay, so yeah, what's yours?
You want to hear one of mine?
Yeah,
I think something that I would tell my younger self, really from ages probably like 15 to marriage, and I think it's probably something that I need to continue telling myself, is like, if you want something, if you've got a desire for something now in your life, you'll probably want it 5 or 10 years from now too. And so start going for it, start building that. And what I mean is, if it's a business goal, or if it's a professional goal, or if it's like a life experience, like you want a skill set to improve in becoming, I want to be more proficient in jazz guitar, or I want to get better at jujitsu, or I want to get better. It's like, if you have these desires and you can see that you've had it for a while, well, you'll probably have it 10 years from now too. So you might as well get started on achieving whatever that goal is. And the reason I think it's important for me to tell myself that now, and one of the reasons I wish I would have told myself, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, that's like the classic line, is just like, a year from now, you wish you would have started today.
Yeah, that's what that was making.
Yeah.
That's the quote I was thinking of as you were talking.
Yeah, and it really just encourages you to start, whatever it is. Start writing that book, or start memorizing the book of Romans. Like, a year from now, you'll wish you would have started now. And I think when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, I had these unnecessary fears around like pigeonholing myself. It's like, well, if I devote too much time into music, then that's all I'm going to be capable of doing. Or if I commit too much time to playing college basketball, that's all I'm going to have for myself. Or if I go to college to study this thing, that's all I'm going to be able to do. And so as a result, I was kind of like in a holding pattern for a good 6 to 8 year chunk of my life, which ended up being some of the more, just like more insecure, trying times of my life. And again, Katie and I can both look at our history and see the Lord's sovereignty in it, and just be so grateful He's brought us to where we're at today. And so I feel like there always has to be that like disclosure at the beginning of looking back and analyzing your life in retrospect. Mm-hmm. There's that disclosure that like God worked it all out so much better than we ever could have. So I'm not like questioning what He chose to do in my history, but it's things that I think you can still learn lessons from your past to apply to your current situation. And it's like, with that knowledge, you have to do something with it. Like, you can apply it to your life. And does that make sense? Telling myself to start today?
And you were really, we've talked about this a lot, I think, because having that feeling of, okay, if I would tell myself this at 18, it's like, is my 40-year-old self going to want to have told myself now that same thing?
Yeah.
And so, like you said, we can learn from that and move forward in it. And I do think you were a really intentional person, and you had very strong desires that God had placed on your heart. Because I think, like, for someone like me, where it was like, oh, I want to like go to cooking school in France, or I want to be an Olympic ice skater. It's like, well, I don't really have any of those desires anymore, but
Sure.
Some of the ones that keep coming up over and over and over, it's like, take action on those.
Yes,
and
100%.
And it's so easy as a single person, we've talked about this so much, to feel like a year is such a huge commitment. Like 4 years is a huge commitment when you think of like college, what college you're going to, or if you're not going to college, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And once you have a longer vision, whenever that hits, for us, I think it was getting married and having kids, we're just like, 4 years? Okay, that's not a big deal. We'll just work towards that 4-year goal.
Yeah, it is interesting how time frames really like change in your brain when certain things like having children or getting married happen. And I do want to clarify, I don't think that like any desire that just drops into your heart on any given moment is worth pursuing. I'm speaking of goals or desires that have been there repeatedly for a consistent amount of time, and that fit into your value system that hopefully is submitted to God's word and what He has for your life. Because that is something that I had a desire for at a very young age, is to have a healthy marriage. And first to honor the Lord, and then to have a healthy marriage. And I wanted to have children. Like, I didn't want to wait until I was 40 to start having kids. I wanted to be a young father. And so those were things that I knew I wanted. And so when I'm talking about different goals or ambitions, they always came through that filter, which filtered a lot of youthful ambitions and dreams. It filtered a lot of them out. Mm-hmm. When I was like, wait a second, I don't want to I don't want to backpack, Europe for a year, because that's just it's not going to help me get closer to my goal. And of course, that desire's like, it's not gone away forever, but it's, I think, one of those things that I want to do with you now, or we want to, maybe not for a year. That's not a good example, but.
Well, it depends on the person. Because like that might be a valuable memory they will always wish they had.
Sure.
But in your instance,
I don't regret not doing
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what it is for you. And I think, so basically you're saying if something's really on your heart, it doesn't matter like the time or the expense or like what it might cost you now to have that experience or to learn that skill, it'll still pay off.
I think that's a good way to sum it up. Don't let the amount of time it might take to achieve it or the amount of money it might cost to achieve it prevent you from doing it. If it's something that you don't want to do, then that's fine, or it doesn't fit into your ultimate vision for life, then move on from it. But I wish there were so many things that I was like, oh, it takes 2 years to do that. Well, I'm not going to do that. Or it would take me 4 years to build the business to this. I don't want to start that. That's a silly reason to not do anything.
That's good. Okay, so this is the second thing I would go back and tell my younger self, and that is God is keeping you and your salvation is his salvation. In that he saved you with his salvation, and that is why you are saved, and he's not taking that away. And I think I had a lot of fear surrounding losing my faith growing up. And this wasn't because of the church I went to necessarily or the family I was raised in, like the theology that we were raised in. But that's just for whatever reason, a fear that I had. I was really concerned about martyrdom. And if I was martyred, because I think I read all these missionary books and stuff growing up, and I was really terrified that if I was martyred, I would denounce the faith, and then what?
Yeah.
You know, like
go
I don't
to hell,
want needles poked in my fingernails. I don't know what I'm going to do in that situation. Like, Lord, am I going to just like denounce your faith? And I think I wasn't making room for the fact that God he's with you in whatever moment he calls you to, and he keeps you in whatever he calls you to. And once you're his, you're his. And I mean, it makes me like emotional right now because I'm just so thankful. Since like a year ago, I guess, even when I've had like downs in my faith, or I know that I'm not walking closely with the Lord at that time or whatever, I've never doubted that I'm his and that I'm his for eternity and that he bought me and he's going to keep me. And it doesn't matter what, Satan throws in my path or when I stumble or fail or sin or, things catch me off guard. I'm his and that's not going to change. And I think that's definitely something I would have loved to believe when I was, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 and so on. So.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's like the great celebration of our faith and of our eternal hope is that it's built on the perfect one. It's built on his faithfulness. It's built on his steadfastness and his goodness towards us and his perfect work on the cross. Like if there was this contingency on us fulfilling, like holding up our end of the bargain or finishing something that he started, it would be a hopeless cause and it would be a very fearful life. But it's he that which hath begun the good work in us. Well, he's the one that's going to be faithful to perform it until the day of salvation. And he said on the cross, it is finished. He did all of the work for our righteousness and for our eternal security in Christ. It's what's crazy in Ephesians, it says that now we are seated at the right hand of God. Like right now we're there. Are we there in body? I don't know, like what timeline wise, I don't know how it works because it's like outside of time. But he says, hey, you're here at the right hand of God in his presence. It behooves him to call you his brother. And we are his bride right now. And we're living this life in faith, waiting for his return or waiting until he calls us home. But we're living it knowing that he's the one that ordained everything. He's the author and the finisher of our faith. I love that like we get to look unto Jesus, Hebrews says, the author and the finisher of our faith. It's like he's the one that wrote the whole story and then he's going to execute all of it in his perfect timing and in his perfect way. And we simply get to be recipients of his goodness and of his grace and then live as grateful recipients of his goodness.
Yeah, and I don't have the references for these verses, but a verse that was encouraging to me growing up was my mom would often say, like, he who is faithful to begin a good work in you will complete it.
Yeah, I think it's Philippians 1. It's in Philippians 1 somewhere.
Yeah, so that was encouraging to me. I think a verse that was probably the most scary to me was the one where it says, if you denounce me before men, I'll denounce you
Yeah.
before my Father.
Right.
And I was just like, I don't know, it stressed me out.
Yeah.
But then you see the grace in it, and you see how the Lord knows the heart of those who he has, because when you see the story of, I think it was Peter who denounced Christ
Like
three
times,
times before the rooster crowed,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like, the Lord knows.
And then he made him
he was still Peter.
Yeah, exactly.
He was still the
And he said,
rock.
on this rock, I'll build my church.
Yeah.
And that was like, again, I love that with any, you might call hero of the faith, the Bible does a very good job to mar their character.
Yes.
Each person that we might call a hero of the faith fell short in big ways.
Yeah, Moses and hitting the rock. He wasn't even able to go into Canaan.
I mean, you think of Abraham, who's known as the father of our faith. Like, his whole life is just, he's got a checkered past of like saying, oh no, she's not my wife, she's my sister. You know, of going into Hagar, you know, to sleep with her to try to get this offspring that God had promised. Like, he just kept messing up time and time again. And yet he's considered the father of our faith, the father of our faith. And that's pointing to God's goodness and God's faithfulness.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that,
Jacob tricking his father-in-law,
Yeah, it's
tricking
like-
his dad for the birthright.
yeah, or even
David.
David. Yeah.
Well, David's is a big one. I feel like David's is like popular.
Yeah, him being this person that's, you know, the time and time again is spoken of as a good example to being somebody that, you know, was a man after God's own heart, whatever that means, or that sang and praises to the Lord and had this passion for the Lord. And it's like, okay, don't look at him as an example in every way, though. Like, he fell very short. And we're saying all this to say, I think that all of this points to like man's inability to live right before God, and God's ability to perfect us only through him and through his perfect work.
Yeah, and just his righteousness being imputed to us.
Yes, exactly.
So.
It being a gift, 100% a gift.
Anyways, okay, so what
Yeah.
about you?
Okay.
Number two.
Number two. I think I would tell my like 12, maybe 11, like 11 to like till I was married self. When I would have pimples or zits, I think I would say, maybe you should give that like another 24, 48 hours before you start trying to squeeze it or pop it.
I think you should tell yourself this right now.
Probably. I mean, the only difference is I just don't get as many zits. But
Yeah, you don't.
But I don't know what the game plan was as like a 14-year-old and thinking, okay, man, I'm going to like this wedding and I'm going to see Katie, who I have a crush on. Oh no, there's like the beginning of a zit. I'm going to go to town on it and take care of that before I go to the wedding. And it's like an hour later after I had like a machete out chopping on this thing. I'm like, okay, that's way better. Now I just have a crater in my forehead.
Elisha, you do this still. Like, Elisha has clear skin, and I will look at his face like, we're like, okay, we're going to go film, or we're going to take a family picture or something. And he comes out of the bathroom. We're going to church. And he comes out of the bathroom like bleeding, like blood just coming down this giant sore. And I'm like, did you get cut? Like, what happened? He's like, no, I had a zit. And I was like, there was nothing there before you just like hacked at it.
Why do I do that? I do not know. That is a bad, like, so.
We're like going on a date and he just like has
What's
this huge
the game
sore
plan?
on his face.
I'm like, yeah, I'll just pop that really quick and it'll be gone. What? No, that's not how it works.
Okay, so funny story. When we first got married, I was pretty good about holding off on zits. Also, I didn't get like teenage acne. It was like very rare. I would get, pimple here or there. Well, I get pregnant with Leon, and my second trimester, I have like acne. And Elisha was going to be so helpful and pop them all for me.
You would ask me to.
Because you would ask if I wanted you
No,
to.
I wouldn't.
This is what happened. I would look at you and you just look at them and not look me in the eye. So I'm like, do you want to pop that? It was like he had this like you needed to do something about it. I need
That's
to cough.
what you felt.
Anyways, yeah, I would ask him to pop them. And I just had all these sores. It was
It
it gave me a lot of empathy for people who struggle with acne, though. I will say that. It was a bad time in my life.
I
skin-wise.
know I've got scars on my face to this day from when I was 12. Like, just going to town. Anyway, so that's something I would tell not just my younger self, but apparently I should tell my current self that as well. Just give it time. Let it run its course. It's better in the long run.
It can be so hard. Oh my goodness. Okay, so honestly, all of these things we could tell ourselves now.
Probably.
That's the beauty of reflecting.
Yes.
You could use 2020 hindsight to learn from the past.
Yes.
Okay, the third thing I would do, and I would tell my younger self, is learn music by ear. That is big. I wish, I spent hours and hours and hours practicing the piano, practicing the guitar. I started to learn the guitar by ear. Practicing the harp, practicing the viola, taking lessons for all these things. And I'm so bummed when I see how Elisha can just sit down and just make up music and play with the kids and accompany them when they're singing. Or we'll go to a church service. He could just join in with the music side of stuff. And I know that I can learn. This is probably one of those things that I need to tell myself, I'm probably going to want to play music by ear 10 years from now.
Sure.
So I should just start. But it's basically I had that practice time built into my homeschool schedule for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And now that's not built into my schedule. And so I wish that I learned music by ear. And after I learned the basic treble clef, bass clef thing for reading music, which is super helpful, just gone into by ear. And my parents, I think what kills me is my parents started paying for by ear music lessons. And I was such a good classical pianist. I kind of stuck my nose up at the whole by ear thing.
Well, because you would have had to go slower before you could run faster
I would have
again.
had to sound bad again.
Yeah.
And I was 16 and I was no, I already sound good. My teachers love me. I am a great pianist. And my younger sister, Kelsey, was not too good at reading music. She didn't have much to lose. And she started playing by ear. And now she is an incredible pianist. She has really cultivated that gift or that skill. She's worked really hard at it. But I'm still just Katie, you had the opportunity. Why didn't you take it? So
it is an interesting thing that, there is a very pretentious, I guess, subculture or category of people that put their nose up at playing folk or traditional music or playing by ear, and they only want to play classical music. But if I had to guess, it seems like the percentage of people that learn by ear at a young age versus the people that only play by ear and do very formal classical training.
Play by music.
Reading music and play classical. The percentage of the people that continue playing their entire life and blessing others of the ones that learn by ear seems to be much higher than the people that learn by music. And that classical, it's they do it very structured until they're 18 or 22 or whatever. And then it's then they don't play at all anymore. There's not this casual pick up their instrument or sit down at the piano in the middle of the living room and, lead worship or just play fun songs with their family. It's this all or nothing approach.
Well, because you learned someone else's interpretation of music more than you learned your instrument. You know, I still don't know the instrument.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. Playing by ear teaches you your instrument.
Yeah.
And you could take that and apply it to a lot of different instruments. And I just knew how to play the notes. I knew how to copy what someone else created, but I never learned my instrument.
Yeah.
Anyways,
well, that's good.
You guys, if you're 12 years old listening to this right now.
I do wonder what other disciplines this relates to, because I feel there's probably you could carry it over to being really good in school and doing great on tests, but then not continuing to learn and to educate yourself after school.
Yeah, if you don't learn how to learn,
right,
and you just learn how to pass the test. If you learn the test more than you learn the concepts.
Yeah, exactly. That it's a lot harder to take those principles or those skills, and then when you're 35 or 45 or 55, learn something new or apply it to
I think I was reading, I got a book from the library and it said all millionaires are, this was an old book. I feel there's a lot more millionaires than there used to be.
I think so.
Millionaires is the new 6 figures or something. I feel
I don't know if it's that extreme yet, but yeah.
I know, but the way people talk about it.
Sure.
Anyways, but they said why millionaires are B students or C students. And the whole thing was like, they weren't focused. It was like based on studies. And I got like all my nose all bent out of joint because I was like, I'm going to be successful. And I was an A student.
Yes.
But I think it was the whole concept around like, they didn't just copy and do what they were told. They were more creative. They cared more about getting the outcome they wanted than getting the right necessarily outcome. And they just didn't study the test. They just learned to learn.
Like they wanted to understand the
learned
concepts.
to apply what was helpful to them.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting concept.
That is interesting. Yeah, it's fun to think about. If you guys hear voices in the background, there's people outside of our house making some ruckus. I think it's safe. Doesn't seem like anybody's getting hurt out there. And it's not our children, just so you know.
No.
They're not our responsibility. Okay, my third one. Do you want to hear my third one?
Yeah, I want to hear your third
fantastic.
point. I'm learning new things.
Yeah, I think that's, and again, this is so applicable to today, but I don't know, it's so hard to like put it into a one-liner, to put it into like one phrase to tell myself, but it's caring far less about people's opinions of you when you are younger. I can't believe how paralyzing that was for me at a young age. How many desires were on my heart, and fear of man would keep me from taking action or pursuing something. And over time, I think a big motivator was, or a big like breakthrough with this was just simply getting married and like having the support of your spouse. All of a sudden, everybody else's opinions and voices became so much less relevant and meaningful to me. And I think you can do this in an unhealthy way. Maybe some people even naturally have an unhealthy lack of like respect of persons, meaning like they don't even care about people at all, let alone care about what people think of them,
or like their opinions or criticism, or
or they won't take
exactly.
They won't take constructive criticism, or they won't take some healthy feedback, and they just bulldoze over people and just go their own way without thinking. So the Bible's clear on there being so much wisdom and safety in the counsel of many, and the wise man is somebody that seeks counsel and seeks advice. But I think that when I would go and seek advice, I thought whatever that person would say, if it was a mentor of mine or a father, whoever, an uncle, a sibling, a family member, I thought like, okay, well, if they aren't supportive of this, then there's no way I should do it. Rather than realizing like, no, I still have to live with my own decisions. And regardless, I was going to have to live with my indecision or like my lack of taking action or with my taking action. And it's far more, I guess, educational to learn from your own decision making, from my perspective, than it is from your own passivity. I'd way rather learn from taking action and maybe failing or making mistakes than looking back and saying, wow, I didn't try any of those things, so therefore I didn't learn any lessons, and I regret not doing them. And so I think that, starting from the time I was, 15, 16, 17 years old, I think I put way too high of a premium on what people thought of me. And that's just a common thing with man, I think, is you just care about what people think of you far more than what you feel like the Lord's telling you to do, or just the desires you have on your heart. And again, this isn't negating the importance of seeking counsel, but then it's also realizing you have to make your own decision, and you've got to live with that decision.
Yeah, I think that, well, that's one thing that I'm actually so grateful for, Elisha. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but the way you take criticism, even non-constructive criticism, like some kook has an opinion on your life, and I'm like, okay, who needs to listen to that person? You're like, no, let's take what they have to say. Let's think about it. Let's pray about it. And often you come away with something that either you can learn and grow from, or we can learn and grow from a couple. And, oh man, I need a cough. Sorry. We're like mainly over this sickness, but I've got a lingering cough every once in a while. Anyway, so I'm really grateful for that, and just your sensitivity to caring about people. And I think people feel that, that you care about them. But I also think when we got married, we had to make some decisions to do things against certain people's comfort zones.
Yeah.
Like sometimes people give you advice based on their comfort zone.
Oh,
like,
I think we all do,
like
usually.
I wouldn't do that if I were you, because that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I think we learned you can respectfully pursue things that are even in opposition to what someone you love very dearly would encourage you to do, but you could do it in a respectful way and keep the relationship healthy while doing that.
Yeah.
And eventually gain that, respect and report back.
Yeah. I like sense this all the time in myself when people will tell me about something that they're going to do that I've got like a physiological aversion to. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I don't know if you should try that. But then I want to get rid of like my fears and my own apprehensions and be like, wait a second, is this something that might actually be good for them? Or maybe the Lord is going to use it in a powerful way. Maybe the Lord has placed this on their heart. And so I guess what I'm saying is I understand why people sometimes have such like a negative reaction to you bringing something to them, because I feel the same way sometimes when people bring it to me, and I try to like think about it for a second and get over like that initial knee-jerk reaction, and then try to give constructive feedback that's not just totally shooting their idea down.
Yeah.
Because if they've gotten to the point of like bringing it to you, then they've obviously spent at least some amount of time considering it, and it's like a legitimate consideration. So you don't want to make them feel dumb for bringing it to you.
Yeah, but when I think of yes. And then when I think of Instagram, starting that, YouTube, starting that, the podcast, every single one of our businesses, at least one person that was close to us was like, don't do it. Don't do it.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that we're able to move forward without it being unhealthy for us or unhealthy for the relationship or unhealthy for them. And I think like sometimes I think the fear and like the whole fear of man thing can be like, well, I'm going to lose this friendship, or like they're going to lose respect for me, or they're not going to like me anymore.
Yeah.
And I think I have more confidence. I don't know if you do.
Oh,
but like
time.
Moving forward, when you feel like, no, this is what's best for our family, I do feel like the Lord truly placed this on our heart. We have other counsels encouraging us to do this.
Yeah.
And being able to move forward without making sure every single person is comfortable with the decision that we love and care about.
Yeah. It is nuts when I think back to like being in high school, and I think about the people whose opinions mattered the most to me then. That, maybe there was 3 or 5 or 10 people that would come to mind when I was like picking out the clothes that I wear. I'd be like, oh, well, so-and-so think this looks cool, or, will they think that this song that I wrote is dumb, or will they think it sounds cool, or will they think it's cool that I'm reading this book or writing this paper? Like, I think of who those people are, and it's no shade on where they're at now in their life, but it's just funny how little I care now about their, perspective on my life. Like we've all gone on with our life. And it's like, that's funny. I spent like a solid chunk of my youth trying to impress them or please them. And then we just all go on with our life. It's like, that's a funny thing.
And they probably didn't care that much.
Yeah, they didn't. They never do ever, even to this day. And that always helps me when there are people that I am prone to being, insecure around, or just valuing their opinion in maybe an unhealthy way. Thinking back to 10 years ago and being like, wait a second, whose opinions did I matter then? Or whose opinions mattered the most to me then? And I think of their opinions now, and I'm like, that's funny. I love those people. They're great people, but I'm not like paralyzed by thinking about trying to impress them or please them. And I think it helps me take action now.
And like, okay, these people, I might not be so paralyzed by them in the future. It'll be new people whose opinion I really care about.
And yet my decision, I'm going to be the one that lives with it 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And their opinion, it's going to be just gone,
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, that was good, Elisha. I feel like I took some fresh inspiration to continue in the future.
Yes.
I think I might need to do piano lessons and
learn some music by ear. I want to do that too. Folks, thank you for being a part of this podcast. If you've made it to this point and you have not yet left a rating or review on iTunes, would you be willing to do that? Katie and I love getting the ratings and the reviews.
Yeah, we made it over 800.
Oh, you didn't even tell me that. Wow, thank you all.
Thank you.
I should have started by saying thank you for getting us over 800 ratings and reviews over on iTunes. That means so much to us. All right, any parting words, Katie?
No, I don't think I have any parting words. Hopefully this is a fun conversation though. I love doing these conversations. I know they're public, you guys are here, but I feel like anytime we do something like this, I learn something about you and it just stirs up like fresh conversation. So it might be a fun thing to do in your own marriage. I don't know, or ask your kids a conversation like this.
Yes.
What would they tell their 6-year-old self?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, we will see you guys next Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.